Guys, today we are going to be factoring trinomials, and they are going to be in this form: ax squared plus bx plus c. I hope you guys are all having a good week. So you are going to learn to factor these today. When we factor trinomials, we're going to find factors of c, which is this right here, that add to b. And when I mean add to b, we're going to be taking the sign and the number into consideration. We're going to split the middle term, and then we're going to use factor by grouping. Okay. What I want you to do is, while we are doing these problems, I want to see if you can look at patterns, and at some point you might be able to drop the factor by grouping. All right. So here I've got my trinomial g squared plus cg, 7g plus 10, and I want to find factors of c. So we want to find factors of 10 that add to 7. I suggest, while you're learning this, and since we're just starting, what we call a little T-chart. Okay. So I need factors of 10 that add to 7. So multiply to 10, add to 7. So start at 1 and 10. When I add 1 and 10, it's going to give me 11. And then I've got 2 and 5, and when I add that, that's going to give me 7. So these are the factors that I'm looking for. I'm going to split the middle term, bring down the outside. So g squared plus, I'm going to go 2g plus 5g plus 10. Okay. And then we're just going to do the factor by grouping, which is why I taught you factor by grouping first, even though your textbook doesn't go in that manner. So if I group the first pair, I'm going to factor out a g. That's going to leave me with g times g plus 2. I'm going to factor out a 5, which is going to give me g plus 2 again. So my factors are the binomial, remember, and this. So g plus 5. Remember, again, that factoring is division. So if you wanted to check to see that you were right, you could multiply that out. And I'm going to just do that using FOIL this time, or the double distributive. G times g is g squared. G times 5 is 5g. Then 2g, and 2 times 5 is 10. And when I combine my like terms, g squared plus 7g plus 10. So you see I've started out, or I get, when I multiply them, what I started out with. So this is my factors. All right, again, we want factors of 20 that add to 21. So we're going to multiply to 20. Add to 21. Okay. And 1 and 20, if I add them, that's going to give me 21 right off the bat. Okay. So if I split my little middle term, v squared, and it doesn't matter which order I put it in. Let's put the 20 first this time. Plus 20v plus 1v plus 20. Okay. Out of the first pair, I'm going to factor out a v. And that's going to give me v plus 20. Now out of here, there's nothing I can factor out. So remember, our greatest common factor is 1. So we're factoring out a 1, and it's going to give me v plus 20 again. And again, our binomials. And what we pulled out. Okay, it's really pretty simple. All right, now, notice this time I need factors of 25, because that's our C. So factors of 25 that multiply to negative 10, or add to negative 10. The only way I can do that is I've got my factors of 1 and 25 and 5 and 5. Well, if I want them to add to negative 10, that means that both of these factors have to be negative. Think about that. Negative 1 times negative 25 gives us a positive 25. Negative 5 times negative 5 gives us a positive 25. So when you've got addition for the last term and subtraction in the middle, both of your factors are going to be negative. So when I add them, I keep bumping this today, I'm sorry, I get negative 26 there, and for this, I get negative 10. So there are my factors. So we're going to split that middle term, and we're going to get k squared minus 5k minus 5k plus 25. Okay. When I factor this out, I'm just going to factor out a k. So k, when I factor out of the first, is k minus 5. Here, since remember we want our binomials to be the same, we're going to factor out a negative 5. Negative 5k divided by negative 5 gives us a positive k. And 25 divided by negative 5 gives us a negative 5. Okay, and our binomials are the same, k minus 5. And actually, these are the same, so it's k minus 5. This can be written as, sometimes you'll see it written as k minus 5 squared. I'll accept either one for your answers, but you need to understand that those are equivalent solutions. Okay. Again, I've got x squared minus 11x plus 18, so I need factors of 18. So multiply to 18, add to negative 11. Got a negative what we want to add to, positive what we multiply, so both factors are negative. Negative 1 and negative 18 add to negative 19. Negative 2 and negative 9 add to negative 11. Okay, so there's my answer. I can quit looking at my factors. I'm going to split the middle term and bring down the outsides. X squared, let's go with minus 2x minus 9x plus 18. Okay. Factor out an x, so I get x minus 2. Remember, factoring is dividing. Factor out a negative 9, or divide everything by negative 9. So positive x minus 2 again. Positive 18 divided by negative 9 gives us negative 2. Binomials are the same, x minus 2. My other binomial is the greatest common factors, x minus 9. Okay, I hope you're looking at patterns to make this even easier for you. I know what they are. I'm not going to tell until I come back to school next week. Okay, negative 40 that add to p squared. Now this one's different because we have to multiply to negative 40 and we want it to add to negative 3. All right. Let me make this. We want it to add to negative, multiply to negative 40, add to negative 3. Okay, when I want the two things to get, when I multiply two numbers together and it gives me a negative, one of them has to be positive and one of them has to be negative. So my factors are 1 and 40. And I want my factor here to be negative. So that should lead us to believe that when we're going to add them together, we always keep the sign of the larger. So this is going to be negative. Your larger number is negative. All right. I've got 2 and then negative 20. So this adds, to negative 39. This adds to negative 18. 3 doesn't go into 40 evenly. 4 goes into 40 10 times. And when I add 4 and negative 10, I get negative 6. 5 goes into 48 times, so the 8 would be negative. When I add them, I get negative 3. So here we go. I know a lot of you guys like to do a lot of work in your head, but when you write these down, you're going to find, believe it or not, your factors quicker in a lot of cases, especially when the numbers get bigger. Okay, I've split my middle term, and I'm going to put the negative 8, so p squared minus 8p, and then plus 5p minus 40. Okay, if I add those middle terms together, negative 8p and 5p, it gives me negative 3p. And if I can, I always like to go positive, negative, positive, negative. So here I'm just going to factor out a p. So I get p minus 8. Here I'm going to factor out a 5. So I get p minus 8. Okay, putting it together, p minus 8 times p plus 5. Okay, remember we get the second binomial from that. Okay, last example. I need factors of negative 20 that add to positive 8 this time. So now when I look at my factors, my larger number is going to be positive. So negative 1 and 20 adds to 19. Negative 2 and 10 adds to 8. So there are our factors. So m squared minus 2m, when I split the middle term, plus 10m minus 20. Factor here, and I'm going to get m times m minus 2. Factor out a 10, and I'm going to get 10 times m minus 2. Putting it together, m minus 2 and m plus 10. Now, the only thing we haven't looked at today, and I probably need to put an example of that on here, would be if we have a greatest common factor. So I'm just going to make a little space here because I didn't think about putting that in until just now, like a dweeb. So copy this down. Okay. If we have the trinomial 2m squared plus 4 or plus 8m, actually let's go minus 8m, minus 24. Okay. Notice that all of my numbers are divisible by 2. So I'm going to factor out my greatest common factor first, just like we did when we did factor by grouping. So everything's divisible by 2. I get m squared minus 4m minus 12. Okay. And now I'm going to, like we did before, circle this to remember to put it into our final answer. And I need factors of negative 12 that add to negative 4. Multiply, add. So 12 and 1, but I want it to be negative. I'm just going to leave that right up there because I don't want it to stop. Actually, let's do this. Okay, so negative 12 and 1 is negative 11. 2 and negative 6 gives me negative 4. So those are my factors. So m squared minus 6m minus 2m minus 12. Factor out an m. I get m times m minus 6 should be plus 2m. Factor out a 2, and I'm going to get m minus 6 again. So my final factors putting together are m minus 6 and m plus 2, and then we bring down the 2 that we started with. So don't forget to look for a greatest common factor. All right, so basically when you are factoring these are the 4 different situations that we can have. Everything's positive, so everything has an x to start in these cases. The signs are what's going to be important. If I've got positives, everything's positive, I'm going to have positives adding in my 2 binomials. Okay. If my last term is negative and my b is positive, I'm going to have 1 negative, 1 positive, 1 adding, 1 subtracting. Okay. If I have everything negative except for the x squared, again, we're going to have negative and a positive. The only difference in these two is my positive is larger. Remember, from back in the day, I use larger because it's really its absolute value that's larger, not the actual number itself. Here, our negative is the larger. In the last situation, When C is positive and B is negative, it's going to be X minus something in both of those cases. Just remember, the key is that if you multiply them, you should get with what you started with. All right, so we learned how to factor trinomials today. Have a great night. And I know Mrs. Wasala said something about confusion with IXL. IXL is your homework for tomorrow night. Not tonight, tomorrow night. It's due on Monday. Have a great evening.